Greg, good morning.
Hi.
You're calling from Toronto?
Calling from Toronto. I've been studying what's been happening in the DTS for a while now, and a couple of days ago, Mark Townsend was recorded on CBC talking about his charity's political work. And when you look at PHS, and when you look at all the travel, and when you look at all the expenses, most of them are around political work. And wasn't PHS meant to be a charity to serve the poor, as opposed to a charity to serve people's political ambition?
Actually, I love that you brought this topic up. I was speaking to a local reporter about this. Yes, there is some political advocacy that takes place in the sense that sort of outside of the political parties. It's issues based, as most of our political advocacy work is now. But this brings up a very important point, and this is something that I would like to advocate. The quicker that Canadians and our system, including Elections BC and Elections Canada, understand that we have PACs, super PACs, like you see in the United States. They are in existence here. Some of them show up.
I don't think that this applies to PHS.
Can I just finish, please? This is very important that we need to have a system that recognizes this, because we actually have a more transparent and democratic system that way. Because what you're seeing, and PHS did some fantastic work, but many other groups like them and other organizations that are issues-based split their time between that type of social work or advocacy work and actually political work. And Elections BC, Elections Canada, CRA all need to recognize that this is happening, and it creates confusion and it allows dark spaces for people to get away with a lot of stuff we're seeing today.
Absolutely. And it's not just PHS.
Excuse
right?
me. There's
Hang on, Greg. One at a time.
There's a great deal being made about this, and there's very little distinction between groups, nonprofit groups that are engaging in political activism and actual charities. In fact, if you look at this audit, Greg, and I don't know if you have looked at the audit, but in fact, very little of what you're talking about is actual political activism. There was advocacy. But the kind of spending that you're talking about, the hotels and whatnot, a great deal of this was travel to conferences and that sort of thing. The issue around political advocacy is something that requires a lot more light and a lot less heat. And there's been a lot of things that have been said about this that are completely inflammatory and misleading to the public.
Greg, I'm going to stand up for Greg here. Greg wasn't saying that. What Greg was saying is that any part of it, we need to recognize that political advocacy or activism, I think it's advocacy at any, whatever you call it, is included.
I want to let Greg speak for himself. He's on the line, and he's obviously taken a good deal of time to look through this. You said you read the audit.
Yeah, I've read through every page of the audit. I mean, it doesn't look very good. As someone who's traveled a lot and spent a lot of expense money, I was very shocked. But when I look at the activities inside of PHS, and it's not just PHS, right? It's Atira too. Janice Abbott is pushing her agenda of having sex workers to work inside their homes. There's focus by the executives on these political objectives. If you look at the CRA's rules, they don't say that advocacy is necessarily a non-political activity. It's political if it's something we don't all agree on. Now, I personally agree with Insight, for example, but lots of people don't agree with Insight. I don't agree with how Insight's run at all. During Occupy Vancouver, I called Insight, and I mentioned to them that there's a possibility that someone may die after the first drug overdose. Insight said they come. They came, they dropped off some needles, and they didn't do the advocacy they promised. So, it's kind of selective advocacy.
Greg, I thank you for your participation. We are flat out of time. I thank all three of my guests on The View from BC.